Perfect. So, hi everyone. My name is Betül Demiray Sandras. I am the youth coordinator for Group 4, and I am a PhD candidate in curriculum instruction and teacher education program at Michigan State. And I'm also a Fulbright alumna from Turkey and an early childhood educator. In my research, I explore young children's understandings, attitudes, and experiences related to civic engagement. And while doing that, I combine international and critical perspectives through qualitative methods. And our group expert is Dr. Takisha Lashore. She is a licensed master's level social worker and inequality sociologist. She is a native Detroiter with strong roots in the South. Dr. Lashore has over 25 years of practice experience as faculty, academic staff, higher education administrator, behavioral mental health clinician, and policy advocacy practitioner. She currently serves as director of the Master of Social Work graduate program with the School of Social Work at MSU. Thank you so much, Dr. Lashore, for sharing your time with us. And our first presenter is Priyanka Kothari. She is a fourth-year PhD student in the curriculum instruction and teacher education program at Michigan State University. Her research explores history and social studies education with a focus on how to empower young people as active agents of historical inquiry, critical thinkers, and engaged citizens. Her work is grounded in the belief that youth are not only learners of history, but also creators of historical knowledge, whose voices are essential to building more inclusive and connected communities. Through her research and teaching, Priyanka advocates for educational practices that foster historical inquiry by positioning students' lived experiences as assets within the learning community. And our second presenter is Emmanuela Ezeakacha. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. She is an engineering manager, project manager, and emerging thought leader passionate about technology, leadership, and talent development. With over 7 years of experience in software engineering and engineering leadership, she has led cross-functional teams, delivered large-scale technology initiatives, and mentored professionals across different stages of their careers. Beyond technology, Emmanuela is passionate about helping young people discover their potential, develop leadership capacity, and create meaningful impact within their communities. Her work focuses on the intersection of technical excellence, mentorship, and people development, with a belief that empowering individuals is one of the most sustainable ways to strengthen communities and shape the future. Our next presenter will be Tracy Vongai Mapfumo. She is a Zimbabwean social entrepreneur committed to transforming indigenous crops into competitive, nutritious products. After earning her Bachelor of Science in Agriculture Plant Science from the University of KwaZulu-Natal in 2015, she joined BioInnovation Zimbabwe and explored the commercial potential of local crops. In 2018, she founded Annie's Treats, a seed-based snack company named after her late mother. The brand sources ingredients from rural smallholder farmers, linking business growth with community empowerment, especially in climate-affected areas. Beyond her company, Tracy has trained women and youth in food value addition, entrepreneurship, and agro-processing across Zimbabwe and even in Malawi. Her work has earned major recognition, including the Youth Connect, first runner-up in Mashonaland Central Province, Zimbabwe. She participated in the U.S. Department of State's Professional Fellows Program at Michigan State University in fall 2022, and is currently pursuing an MBA at Chapman University while building her entrepreneurial and leadership capacity. And our final presenter is Calvin Manica. He is an award-winning international journalist and media entrepreneur from Zimbabwe. He leads Besana Media, the publisher of the Besana Mail, creator of the Ubuntu Circle initiative, and the home to Zim Truth Radar. He holds a BA in Media Studies from Zimbabwe Open University and an MA in Global Media and Communications from Nottingham Trent University in England. He is a Chevening Scholar and Mandela Washington Fellowship alumnus at Michigan State University. So, as you can see, we have a wonderful group of presenters and our expert, Dr. Lashore. And I'm so excited to hear each of your work. And our first presenter is Priyanka Kothari. So I will share my screen right now with her presentation, and she can take the stage.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning again. First of all, thanks, Betul, for the lovely introduction of everybody. It is nice to see you all today. My name is Priyanka Kothari, and I'm going into my 4th year in the Curriculum Instruction and Teacher Education program here at MSU. Before I started my PhD, I was a high school history teacher in India for 3 years. And since then, I have worked with teacher candidates here in Michigan as a methods course instructor and as a field instructor, which has given me a chance to observe a wide range of students and teachers across both the India and US. I'm very interested in global learning opportunities, but as we all know, they come with their fair share of challenges, to say the least. When I transitioned from the Indian education space to the US, I was really skeptical and concerned of positioning myself as a teacher here. But being in a few schools around the area really helped me understand the system. Next slide, please. And I realized that even though our teaching contexts, methods, philosophies, and even what we teach may be different, sometimes significantly so, but the students are really similar. They have the same kind of questions, the same kind of problems, and the same kind of attitudes towards what they learn. In both India and the US, many students show a certain level of disinterest in history as a school subject, ranging from this is very boring and why do I need to know this to this is a waste of time. But sometimes, occasionally, we'll also get a few students here and there who say, oh, this is so cool and I really love these stories from the past. This was my experience both as a high school teacher and now also as a teacher educator, which really catalyzed my journey into the PhD program. I was perplexed with this broad range of student responses towards teaching and learning of history because history is such an integral part of our lives today. So, in my recent research project with 16 high school students in India, one of the things I was studying was their attitudes towards history. I asked them if they liked studying history, and there's this one girl's response that really stuck with me. Let me play you a very short clip from her interview. Next slide, please. Beetle, can you click on that? Oh, I can't hear the sound. Maybe you need to share with audio.
Most of the time,
Oh,
so do you like
that.
studying history? Most of the time, it depends on what we are. Can you hear now? So do you like studying history? Most of the time, it depends on what we are studying. Like if we are studying about Hindu, like Marathas and all, I'm the most interested one. But in French Revolution and all, sometimes I think, why are we even studying it? We are not French. But I am interested because sometimes teachers tells us things that are not in book, and then it awakens the curiosity in me. So I ask many questions, but then I feel like
This is not that important. Only Indian history I prefer most.
So there is much to unpack here. For me, this short response captures a tension that I continue to think about in history education. She starts off by saying that her interest in the subject depends on what they are learning. She is a Hindu from the Maratha community, so she's the most interested one in Maratha history, which is basically her own history. Next slide, please. But when it comes to topics like the French Revolution, one of the things she was learning in her ninth grade, she sometimes wonders, why are we studying it? We are not French, she says. So when the French Revolution is presented as something that has happened to people who feel very distant from her own experience, it becomes difficult for her to see why it matters. But notice what happens when her teacher moves beyond the textbook. Her curiosity comes back. Still, at the end of the day, she prefers knowing about Indian history over anything else. Next slide, please. Now, there's broadly three things that are going on here. There's a strong connection to local topics, and at the same time, there is a disconnect when learning about the global topics. And in the midst of all of that, the way the content is taught really makes a huge difference. So it makes me think that perhaps the problem is not that young people are uninterested in history. What if we saw responses like these as evidence that students are telling us something about how they learn or want to learn? Perhaps it is that we have not always given them opportunities to see themselves within it meaningfully. Next slide, please. History education can empower young people when it moves beyond teaching about the past to valuing students' own lived experience as sources of historical knowledge and inquiry. In the next few minutes, let's explore innovative approaches to teaching history that position youth experiences at the center. Next slide, please. Can we reimagine a classroom where we can help them link the everyday local experiences of our students to global phenomena, to see the possible points of connections while also finding strengths in our differences? Now, centering student experience does not mean that whatever a student thinks about history is automatically true. Students' personal experience does not replace historical evidence. Rather, it means that their experiences become starting points for asking historical questions. And then we teach them how to investigate those questions using evidence. Students come to classroom with experiences, identities, relationships, and questions that are already rooted in particular places, communities, relationships, identities. So instead of centering their learning around the content, when students ask, what do I need to know for the test? What if they asked, what do I want to understand about my community? And how does this affect the world? A student might investigate a family's migration story, a local monument, or a community tradition. These projects would have a much bigger potential to grab their attention. Next slide, please. This approach also empowers the student rather than leaving them as mere consumers of information. They can take on four different but interconnected roles. First, students investigate questions and become researchers. Second, they collect and share narratives like storytellers. Third, they examine evidence, interpret them, and construct meaning. And finally, they connect historical knowledge to the communities they inhabit. Instead of always studying for a test, students may be encouraged to create something for an authentic audience. The final product could be a podcast, a digital exhibit, a documentary, an oral history archive, something that is meant for the community as a whole. Next slide, please. Meaningful learning is never just restricted to students or teachers in the classroom alone. When students know that their work is going to be seen by their families, their community, a local museum, or even students in another country, the purpose of the work changes. So, youth voice, in my opinion, isn't simply about giving students a microphone. It is about giving them meaningful opportunities to ask questions, investigate evidence, construct knowledge, and have that knowledge and experience matter beyond the classroom. Next slide. At the same time, the magic of history is not simply in knowing what was there, but also in understanding why it matters today. So, a next natural step is to ask, how does this local story connect to something bigger? A family's migration story can reveal anything from the pursuit of a better financial reality to fleeing because of a tragic historical event. And with it, one can better develop an understanding of how interconnected the local and global can be. So when a student asks, why are we studying French Revolution? We are not French. Instead, with this approach, they might be prompted to understand and see the connections between how the experiences of French people and the French Revolution still influence their lives today, sitting in India, because we all know that they do. Next slide, please. When we think of global learning, our minds often goes towards outward expansion. More countries, more people, wider network, think global, think big. But I wonder if we sometimes move outward too quickly. Perhaps, like a tree, global learning needs both branches that help students look outward and roots that help them understand where they are. Global citizenship may feel abstract to our youth today, but their community isn't abstract. Their family is not abstract. Neither is their neighborhood. The key is to use those experiences as the bridge to the bigger world. It must be contextualized. Global learning does not always have to begin with looking outward. Sometimes it can begin by looking deeply at where we are to catapult us into a deeper understanding of our world. I began with a student who told me that she was the most interested one in the history that felt like her own, but that she also became curious when her teacher moved beyond what was in the textbook. Her response doesn't tell us that the youth don't care about history or that they don't care about global connections or global learning. I think it tells us that they want us to help them find a way into it. Next slide, please. And so perhaps the role of history educators is not simply to tell young people what happened in the past. Rather, perhaps I think it is to help them understand and ask questions like, where am I in this history? What I can learn from my community? How is my story connected to someone else's? And what I can do with what I have learned. And here, I acknowledge that when we think of history education, our mind does not necessarily jump to global learning. In fact, most traditional understanding and the first impressions of anyone we talk about when we talk about history as a school subject is anything from why is it important? So it's important, but it's boring. But I present to you a perspective that global learning is such a meaningful goal for history education. Because when young people see themselves as part of history, they can begin to see themselves as participants of the world and in shaping what comes next. With that, I would like to thank you. If you go to the next slide. And if there's time for any questions, I'm happy to chat now or later. Here's my contact info. And looking forward to some collaborations and good thinking around global learning today.
All right. Thank you for that, Priyanka. I think there's something really powerful about the idea of moving from my history to our history. Because when we share experiences, they stop being just our experiences. They become something other people can learn from. And that actually connects beautifully with the story I want to share with you today. Because my own journey started, differently. And there was a time where I didn't even have a proper learning environment set up. I was trying to get things figured out by myself, learning, watching videos, doing all sorts of things, building little projects here and there, shopping list applications, calculators, and eventually much larger systems used by organizations around the world. But when I look back at that journey right now, it makes me realize that the most important transformation wasn't actually going from beginner to expert. It was going from learning for myself to learning in a way that could create growth in others. And that's the journey I want to take you through. Slide 1, please. Thank you. So in learning myself and moving from phase to phase, it helped me understand that there are certain things that are important. And one of such is actually building capacity. Building capacity in such a way that it doesn't end with you. Because somehow the person who didn't even have a learning environment properly set up then became someone that people always reached out to solve the problem. And one day I just sat and wondered, how did I move from these to this? How did I get to this stage of building softwares used by organizations around the world? But the interesting part is actually what happened in between, not the move in itself. Please slide 2. When I started my career, I discovered that 4 major things were very important. And what are these things? First of all, being capable enough that people could rely on me. This meant that I had to train myself. This meant that I had to grow. I had to get to that point where people could actually call me and get an excellent result. And the next step was I had to learn how to make that capability transferable, because you can't become a community builder if all knowledge sits with you and it's not transferred. Then I had to learn how to develop people who could in turn develop others. Then finally, creating capacity that doesn't depend on me being in the room, because it's so important to understand that as a community builder, as a leader, those that you have built, that's your mentees, should speak for you. They should be able to, propagate the ideas that you have helped them to understand. They should be able to transfer the knowledge that you have given to them. Next slide, please. So in my journey through, the shopping list application, the calculator, and all of it, I noticed that every individual step, although it seemed small, but the compounding is what made it look like talent, and is what currently makes it look like talent. So it's not in the individual step, but is in the compounding effect. So we're not looking at each step. I mean, if you had seen me when I was building the shopping list application, I may have looked a bit ridiculous. I mean, it's just a shopping list application. But at the same time, going back to it now, it taught me certain things that aside the skills, as the technical skills of it, it actually taught me patience, a lot of patience, because in leadership and being a community builder, one important thing to know is dealing with humans it's hard with challenging. It has its ups and downs. So you need patience. Please, next slide. So there was a time in my journey where I got to a point where, okay, so I got a new role where I had absolutely no prior experience. Well, I didn't tell myself, oh no, I don't know how to do this. I said, well, I've never done this. Now, those are 2 different statements. One is an identity. One closes a door, and the other is a timeline. The other is actually telling you where you are at this moment. So it's telling you that, oh yes, I'm going to get there. I'm going to get to this place where I'm going to, but at this moment, yes, I agree, I don't know it. But will I do something about it? Oh, definitely, I'm going to do something about it. I'm not just going to, close the door on my identity or define an identity for myself. So I walked through this task. I walked through it, and next slide, please. I walked through it, and I remember thinking, oh, well, yes, I don't know how to do it. And, I currently don't know how to do it, but I know someone who can teach me. Not just knowing someone who can teach me, I was ready to learn. I was ready to do what I needed to do to actually deliver on the work. Oh, and yes, I definitely did it. oh yes, someone was there for me, someone pushed me. It shows you that in the journey to being a community builder, you can't do it alone. You also need people. You also need people that you can walk alongside. You need people you can grow with. You need people you can learn with. And that is where that's where the shift actually comes in. Because capacity doesn't exactly create opportunity alone. It gives you this responsibility to know that others may be bringing you up, others may be helping you, others may be helping you grow. But at the same time, the onus is on you to take that learning and run with it. You don't allow the learning end with you. But now at the same time, it's risky, it's dicey because it becomes there. I mean, you would get to a time where you begin to ask, am I really good for this team? And that's where you ask, but what happens when the person everyone depends on becomes the bottleneck? Because if you know everything and everyone's always having to reach out to you, oh, I need this, oh, I need to do this. I mean, you're now the leader. Don't you think that's going to cause a delay in the process? If you have a structure, if you have a process like a protocol where everyone needs to go through, you are situating yourself to be a middleman that everyone has to get through in order to proceed, in order to do certain things. You don't want to be that leader. You don't want to be that leader that grows into a community builder and teaches others how to be that leader. Next slide, please. You want to be able to teach. You want to be able to learn. Now, in my line of work, there is something we call peer reviews. And in peer reviews, you're expected to, be able to catch, I would use technical terms here and now, bugs here and there. But at the same time, while doing this in my journey so far, I realized I wasn't always doing it because I wanted to actually, be the one who finds the bug, be the one who finds what's wrong. No, I wanted to understand why people did certain things the way they did it. Because one mantra I always move with, even till now, is you need to understand people's mindsets if you want to lead them. You can't use your mindset to overshadow what they have already or what they understand already. So if you want to get through to them, you need to be able to know why they think the way they do, then find your way through. So in learning and in having my peer reviews, it became something I looked forward to. Something that, my colleagues and I would always say, oh yeah, let's quickly get on a call, let's do this, because they no longer found it as though I wanted to, get or show that they weren't doing something right. Because that was actually a very growing stage for me, a turning point for me, because it also helped me understand certain things. So in as much as I was teaching in that stage, I was pointing out that, oh, this is wrong, this could be done better. I realized that I was also learning. You're not the smartest in the room. You don't even need to be the smartest in the room. You just need to be able to be open enough to learn from others, because teaching doesn't mean that you stop learning. Teaching doesn't mean that everyone has to come to you at every single time. It means that you are open enough to learn from your subordinates or fellow teachers even, or learners or students, and still push them to be who they need to be. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this habit of mine of, thoroughly going through reviews, thoroughly reviewing and all, it became something that's progressed, not just from me, it didn't end with me. It progressed into my team. So by the time I entered leadership position, those under me, my subordinates and all of that, they didn't have issues actually doing the same, like reviewing things thoroughly. And that is one way I was able to build a team that delivered quality work so much so that It not only, translated into business profits and all of that, but it also gave us peace of mind. Peace of mind in the sense that we could then focus our energy and brain power on thinking of, more creative ideas to do existing things or even entirely new features. So this quality, this habit of mine moved from being a personal standard to a shared standard and eventually a team culture. So right now, even when maybe I'm on leave or something, my team is capable. I don't have to worry, oh, this is not going right, this is not going right, because I have built a team. And that's important for a community builder. You need to get to that point where you switch from being an individual contributor to a community builder, where you are able to propagate your knowledge across. You are able to build a team that can properly stand for you, represent you, even when you are not there. So my team does due diligence, every single team, not just because I have various teams. So every single team that I have taught one or two things to, they are able to run with it. Because when teaching them, remember, you understand their mindset first. You understand where they are coming from before you make them understand you. And you don't know everything. So in that exchange, in that understanding and in that exchange, you are able to get to, a very balanced point where knowledge is flowing seamlessly. A very balanced point where you don't need to, yes, feathers are ruffled in leadership, definitely, but you need to get to that point where everyone is still on the same path. The goal is the same. Next slide, please. So the multiplication. This is where pouring into people turns you to being a community builder. Because so far, I have gone from teaching one person, two people, multiple people, to leading teams, then building teams. It's one thing leading a team, and it's another building teams. Because when you're building a team, you're not just building individuals, you're building leaders. You're not just building people that should, follow every single instruction or wait for every single instruction from you, the leader. You need to build a team of leaders that can think for themselves, people that can think for themselves, people that can take your idea and run with it. And so far, I have also been able to create impact beyond my reach because sometimes, not just sometimes, but I have seen that even people I've taught have gone ahead to create their own teams, even teams I don't know about right now. I don't even know, the people in those teams, but I am so proud of these leaders when I see them. I feel like a mother hen sometimes, but yes, being a community builder means your impact grows beyond you. Your impact grows way beyond what you can even see sometimes. So that very first stage of pouring into people is the goal. You need to pour into them the right way. You need to pour the right things into them so that your influence can actually continue where your presence ends. Because you won't always be there. You won't always be in every team, but your influence will. Next slide, please. And when you're building people, when you're building teams, you need to understand that because you came from a certain place, whether it's a place where someone poured into you or you were forced to learn yourself, you need to always think ahead. And in thinking ahead, you should be able to ask, who can help me achieve this? So when you're building a team, you're asking yourself, what kind of person do I need on this team? You may not always get the best fit, when you're building a team. But the question is, can you train them? Can you train them into being leaders? But now, the more important question is, who can I help become capable of achieving what I want to achieve? So it's not just saying who can help me achieve this, like I was saying before, but who can help me who can I help become capable of achieving this? That is where building leaders and building, just individuals, subordinates comes. That's the clear difference. The first one is saying that it's all about you. You want to achieve something. You have a goal in mind. Who can help you achieve it? It's quick. You can easily find someone, even if it's not 100% fit. But someone can just get the job done and leave. Or who can be a leader? So at the stage we are in, we need to ask ourselves, who can I pour into that can pour into others? That's just a rephrased version of this question. Who can I pour into that can pour into others? Because at the end of the day, leadership doesn't start and end with you. It doesn't start and end with every one of us on this call. It is about others. It is about the people that come after us. What are you building? Are you building just your organization? Are you building just people with a particular set of skills for yourself? Or are you building for the future? Community builders build for the future. Next slide, please. So in all of this, what we're trying to say is you need to be able to learn. That is building your capabilities. You need to be able to learn. You need to be able to teach. That is making your capabilities transferable. Then you need to be able to connect because it doesn't end with you. So you need to be able to connect people to opportunities. You've taught them, so open the opportunities to them. Then they begin to build on their end also. They begin to not necessarily need you. So it's not like you become, forgotten, but it's more like they can stand on their feet without you. And that's the point where you realize that you've done a good job. Where the people that come after you can stand on their own. That's the point you realize, I think I can take a step back. I have done a good job. I've done an amazing job. You can give yourself the accolades at that point. But at the end of the day, it lives after you. As a community builder, you should always aim for this. Next slide, please. So don't be the end of the knowledge. You need to be the bridge. You need to be the bridge. You can't be the end of the knowledge. Then the measure of how far we have come isn't only how high we have climbed. It is how many people can climb higher because we went first, because you created a bridge. How many people are you connecting to the next stage? Thank you very much, and we'll take questions after this, all the presentations.
Okay, thank you. And good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I'll share my story, my journey, and the impact that I've contributed to through social entrepreneurship. So first of all, I am an entrepreneur. So from seed to shelf is I've created a brand or built a business around sesame seeds, which are grown in Zimbabwe. So I'll take you through the whole journey and any tips that any other youth can use through social entrepreneurship to impact their community. Next slide. Yeah, so the work I've done over the years is both social entrepreneurship and research. So I did my undergrad in agriculture in South Africa. And when I went back home to Zimbabwe, I was searching for a job and couldn't get one. Then I resorted to being a volunteer at a research organization. I had an interest and still have an interest for underutilized indigenous crops in Africa. So at that organization, I then became a research consultant. So I worked for 9 years in different communities, mostly marginalized communities, where we would carry out research and then do training for these community members, mostly smallholder farmers, and then would link them to a market. So doing that made me realize, especially when I was doing the surveys, made me realize that there is a gap, there is something that the farmers have, and I needed to do something like create demand for what they were growing so that they can generate income from what they're growing or what they're harvesting. Then I founded Any Streets, and I've had the opportunity to participate in a professional fellows program at Michigan State University. And now I am pursuing an MBA at Chapman University. So the one mission for both the work I've done is to develop markets for what communities already grow or harvest and know. Next slide. So the problem that Any Streets, which is my business that I named after my late mother, is trying to solve is centered around sesame seed. So sesame seed is one of the most drought-tolerant crop, and in Zimbabwe or in Africa, Southern Africa, we have experienced drought over the years. So, but sesame will survive because most of these smallholder farmers, they depend on it's rain-fed agriculture, so there is no irrigation. So sesame seed will survive. Everything else can die, but sesame seed survives. And it's also nutritious. It's a source of protein, the good fats and fiber. But the farmers do not have a reliable market for sesame seed. It's only now that in Zimbabwe, our government is focusing on improving the sesame seed value chain. But over the years, there's mostly middlemen who come from Mozambique and they detect the price to the farmers. So farmers are shortchanged and they just end up sort of giving away their crop. And this is sometimes the only crop that they have to sell after a drought. So mostly women and youth, about 70% of them are the majority sesame seed farmers. And these are the groups that are vulnerable to seasonal income shocks and are least connected to like organized or formal markets. Next slide, please. So the solution that I came up with was creating a demand for sesame seed and other crops or wild fruits like baobab fruit powder or sorghum grain, moringa leaf powder. So I created Any Streets as a seed bar, energy bar brand in Zimbabwe that is mostly buying sesame seed. 80% of our ingredients are sourced locally in Zimbabwe from smallholder farmers. So the model is the more we buy and the more we sell these energy bars to health conscious consumers in Zimbabwe, the more we create demand for sesame seed, for baobab, for moringa, and the more we generate income for smallholder farmers in Zimbabwe. So if we making this a clean label consumer brand, we 100%, most of the bars are like 100% natural. We don't use artificial preservatives or artificial sweeteners. We are having a premium positioning in the market, and also that allows us to charge a premium price, creating more income for the farmers. And our farmers are trained partners, so we are working on having an outgrowers program. I'll talk more about that, but we want to have a community ownership, like have a steward ownership model for the business. So over the years, since 2018, when I founded the business, I started it as a home-based business in a kitchen, in everything in a Tupperware. But then it grew over the years. We have sold 43,000 handcrafted energy bars through specialty stores or farmers markets, direct to consumers. And in addition to that, we have also partnered with different organizations in training communities, mostly women and youth, on food value addition, or mostly that food value addition. So in 2021, we were part of a project called Zimbabwe Resilience Building Fund funded by UNDP. So we had an opportunity to train 30 women on value addition of a wild nut called marula. So they registered a company. We became their distributor in the capital city of Zimbabwe, Harare. And in 2024, we also partnered with Victoria Falls Wildlife Trust. So they have community members in an area that is like a conservation adjacent community. There's human wildlife conflict. They're trying to find ways to generate income for these communities. So we trained women on value addition, just basic business fundamentals. So we would create like snacks from what they can harvest or what they are growing or what's adapted to their community. And then last year we trained 100 rural-based youth partnering with Impact Hub Harare. In this community, they actually grow sesame seed. So we were training them on handling how to handle sesame seeds for food grade quality and also food value addition for sorghum, for corn, for their vegetables, and food safety in general. And this was a vibrant group and very eager to learn, 100 youth in a room. Yeah. So next slide, please. On the other side of the work that I did, apart from entrepreneurship, my company, Any Streets, the research work that I've done on the side, like part-time consultants and part-time training, involved socioeconomic surveys. So I can count in thousands, over 12,000 farmers that I've interviewed in my career as a researcher. So what we would do is socioeconomic surveys, just finding out how do you generate income and what are the sources, what are the challenges, what are the potential markets or market access barriers. So in doing that, I worked with various communities, different organizations, in addition to the one that I first volunteered for, and we would then link them to buyers. So for example, some wild fruit or wild seeds that can other companies extract cosmetic oil from. So we would link them to cosmetic companies, link them to food companies if it's a food crop. So we would make introductions. In this picture, it was like a buying trip. I went with one of these farm companies, introduced them to the farmers, and then the farmers can sell their either seed or fruit or nuts. And this really helped to build capacity and in over 10 districts that I worked with in Zimbabwe. Next slide. So going global, from being a local business in Zimbabwe and the journey that I'm going through we call it taking Any's to the world, Any Streets to the world. So there are three things that I'm doing to bridge gaps between Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwean market, African market, and as well as the global market. So this is through trade. In 2023, Any Streets exhibited at the Intra-African Trade Fair. It was a great opportunity to connect with African buyers. And also through incubation. Right now, as an MBA student at Chapman, I am going through entrepreneurship mentorship. I'm constantly at the Center for Entrepreneurs, networking, learning, connecting with different mentors. And this has helped me build a brand strategy and even a roadmap to introduce Any Streets energy bars in the North American market. And that will help to extend the impact beyond Zimbabwean farmers, but even sourcing from other African farmers. And then in terms of market intelligence, earlier this year, I had an opportunity to attend the Natural Products Expo West, which is the biggest trade fair for natural products globally. So this was a wonderful opportunity to understand the United States CPG, consumer packaged goods market, and get to know the retail expectations if we are to introduce Any Streets in USA. Next slide, please. So what I can share in terms of entrepreneurship and research and how I found this to be the most valuable things to work together is research and training for communities. It surfaces what communities already have. So sometimes we have solutions for communities without knowing what they have. So we can come up with a project for them, but without knowing exactly what they have already or what thrives in their environment or what is part of their tradition or their culture. So that's what research surfaces. And it also helps to build trust. So if there is a plan for vertical integration for food manufacturing, this is the starting point, research. And identifying overlooked ingredient opportunities, that was the biggest turning point for me. Sesame seed, I wouldn't have known that it could be something that farmers can generate income from or something that I can build a brand for on if I had not done this research. And then it also empowers community entrepreneurs. So farmers who are in a marginalized area become entrepreneurs themselves if we start by researching what they have in their community. Then entrepreneurship, on the other hand, it creates markets, it drives the demand for what farmers are growing or harvesting, it generates revenue. And it also earns credibility that opens training partnerships in those communities. So, for example, that Zimbabwe Resilience Building Fund project, there was a research done, which I was part of, on marula nut, which is an underutilized wild nut. And then training helped farmers to do sustainable harvesting of that nut. And then entrepreneurship created a market. So now farmers or local community members can harvest the nut, make snacks, which they can sell in their community and beyond. And then they build a business out of that. The next slide. So the challenges we have faced as a business, mostly ingredient quality of sesame seed. Farmers sometimes are not aware of where this ends up and at if they are not trained. So we're working on introducing an outgrowers program where we contract farmers. And also production capacity. As I mentioned, the bars we have sold up to date are handcrafted because we do not have the technology to operate at a larger scale. So we are transitioning to partnering with a core manufacturer. We have identified a core manufacturer in South Africa. And another challenge has been access to capital. So now that Institute is centered around social entrepreneurship, we are pursuing impact-aligned grants in order to grow and also exploring steward ownership. Next slide. So the way forward is the Outgrowers program, where we can work with 20 farmers, the core manufacturing, and the capital expansion through grants or steward ownership model. And we are also looking into introducing any streets in Southern California, where I'm studying right now. So whilst I'm studying, I'm finding every opportunity on how to gain information to launch in Southern California. So this is how any other youth can adopt this model. So starting with your community, if you are in a community where my interest is agriculture, crops, underutilized species, African species. But depending on your community, you can map what kind of resources communities have. Sometimes it's not just crops, sometimes it's the knowledge. So it's the knowledge that they have, it's their cultural practices, something that is unique to that community. And this is done through research. It has to be research. In my case, it was socioeconomic surveys, focus focus group discussions. And then you build a market, not a project. So the difference is if it's a project, sometimes it's donor funded and there's no sustainability after that. But if you build a market, a business model, it will sustain that community more than for years. So the question you ask is, can this survive 5 years after the project or 3 years after a project? And then the last step is train before you scale. So in our case right now, we are looking at co-manufacturing, but the quality has to be right. If we start making 10,000 units in one run instead of 500 or 100 bars at a time, doing it by hand. So we have to make sure that our quality is right and building the trust with our suppliers. Next slide. Yeah, so this is what I have to say in terms of building communities, research training, and entrepreneurship all come together to build our communities through the voices of the youth. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, everyone, for attending this important day. My name is Calvin Manika from Zimbabwe. My background is in journalism, media, and communications. So one of the things we have found interesting while doing the work with my team in the field was to understand people from where they come from in their own spaces, rather than reporting about people and trying to give some impressions without the background of the people you are dealing with. But I think it was after the COVID-19 pandemic around 2022 when we start to realize that there was some disintegration, there was some isolation between communities, villages, people, because people, they spend 2 years or more, isolated, people in their own spaces. And there was a need to bring these people together. But one of the solutions which was hand, it was just to look back and think about where we come from as Africans, and that was Ubuntu. So today I'm going to just give a short presentation about building a transnational Ubuntu corridor. I'm looking at youth, the power of youth culture, and also the power of listening to understand, so that we can tell the authentic story of people, of communities, and how can we join communities far apart. And this brings me to have a case study to look on this bridge we are trying to create, which I've titled From Vongai, Zimbabwe to Flint, United States. Next slide, please. So when we speak of Ubuntu, there's a common phrase about Ubuntu, which is I am because we are. But I like to take it like the way Pastor Robert McCarthen, who is the founder of Ubuntu Renaissance Center in Flint, Michigan, said. And I'll quote, he said, the Ubuntu philosophy is to walk past a person and recognize their humanity, unquote. So there's this human connection when you are dealing with people. And I believe that in 2026, just like it was back then in the 80s, 90s, we still need that human connection, for social harmony, to reduce community conflicts, and also even to build trust among the people, and also to have health, to heal social divides in different communities. So the story starts in Vongai, which is a multilingual, multicultural town in the north west of Zimbabwe. This is one of the areas which benefited more during the Federation of Southern Northern Rhodesia and Nyasaland, which today is Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi, between 1954 and 1964. It was one country, if I can say like that. So many people migrated, Malawi and Zambians coming to Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe became like the industrial capital of the federation of these three countries. And there was just swift transition. People could relate easily. But when we look maybe 5 decades later, 6 decades later, today, these are now 3 separate countries. But the uniqueness of Hwange town now is that they still have that authentic culture, the way of living as it was back then between 1954 and 64. So in this community, we are going to see people speaking about 7, 8 different languages. Yet they can understand one another without any translation, interpretation needed. A can speak in his own language, B in another language, C in another language. Yet there is no communication breakdown. They are building their community. They are going on with whatever which are the community needs. So this bring together these people. This is more about language. This is more about humanity. And if you look at Hwange, where it's situated right now, it is now beyond these 3 countries. It now connects with Botswana also coming on board, creating also just another corridor even for trade. So when I was looking at this issue and the young people, I was looking what the power, culture can have beyond these countries I've spoken in Africa. How can we take Ubuntu as our African commodity, going beyond African continent, going to North America? So when you look at this story, it's a very beautiful story where you find that the best way forward is to come together, sit as a community. And this is the reason why we formed what we call Ubuntu Circle, where people come in a circle, they speak, the young and the elder, because we are looking now at the transfer of knowledge, where the elderly, maybe soon or later, they will be not part of us, but young people, they have this responsibility to carry this knowledge, this culture, which can be exported, because in North America, we've got many Africans there. You look in the state of Michigan, Detroit, Flint, we've got a sizable number of people whose roots they are in Africa. But some of them, they've been distanced. They are now tracing back to where they come from. So this transnational corridor, starting from Hwange, going to Flint, it is starting in a circle, in a village in Hwange, where the elders, they are telling this beautiful story of Africa and how young people can walk with pride and go on, share the true African story, which is really needed elsewhere in North America. So traditionally in Zimbabwe, I will speak of Zimbabwe traditionally, there was something called Dari, where people come together, and this was predominantly a platform for men. But in our case, we are bringing both men, women, young boys, young girls to come in this circle to speak about health issues, to speak about climate change, drug and substance abuse, about misinformation going around the world. They are now a global village. There's a lot of misinformation going on. And these people, they come together, they speak, they share knowledge, physical circles. So listen to understand is key part of all what we are doing. And these community listening sessions is the foundation of the dialogue, relationships, and the locally grounded solutions we have been developing on all these issues I have touched on. Next slide, please. In 2024, there was a Ubuntu retreat, Listen to Understand retreat in Vongai, Victoria Falls. This was fully sponsored by the Michigan State Universities and also other participants who could also pay for their participation. But Michigan State University supported us from all respects to make sure that this retreat is hosted in Vongai. It brought academics, local leaders, people, both young and elderly from the communities. The reason for this retreat was to sit down from people from the United States, people from Ghana, South Africa, Botswana, and Zimbabwe. We came together to sit, to speak about Ubuntu in a structured way, and to have what we call a roadmap for in areas we think we can work together. But what was essential about this Listen to Understand was to reach out to the communities, to understand how these communities work, and what else is also possible to be replicated in the United States and other African countries. So you would see that there was a lot of visiting to farmers, to traditional chiefs, to local people in urban settings. All this was done so that we can have like the real situation, the full picture of what is Ubuntu on actual ground. If you look, many universities in the United States, they have been developing an interest to start Ubuntu. They've been reaching out to Africa to understand how Ubuntu can help in terms of economic development, how Ubuntu can help in terms of fighting some of the misnomers which are affecting our young people across the world. But this retreat was just for us to immerse ourselves in the communities without much work like in the actual research, but to just have time with the communities. Then we come back, we sit in a circle, everyone shares what they've learned, what they've seen, we put it down, and we find what the way forward as we go on, as we go back to our countries. Next slide, please. So the interest about Ubuntu, especially the Institute of Ubuntu Thought and Practice at Michigan State University, they've already started something. They are working on this area of Ubuntu. So when I was at MSU in 2023, I met Dr. Upenyu Maje, and he was also interested after learning that I was coming from Vongai, a very diverse community, as I've already pointed to. So he was eager to learn more, and that's when our partnership started, sharing notes, and we had some visits. He visited Zimbabwe, I think 2 times before this retreat. So this is a work in progress at MSU when they are trying to bring these Ubuntu findings when they go out, physical and digital archives of material and non-material culture. And we've been trying to reach out to some foundations where so that we can get some funding to work on documentation, archiving of many things around culture and Ubuntu in Africa. And we are still working on that. So from where I'm seated right now, I can say Vongai and MSU, we have got a relationship we have built, and at least we have somewhere to start from. Next slide, please. Why Flint? This is the work, we're just riding on the work already being done by Institute of Ubuntu Thought and Practice at MSU. They have already some practitioner communities, which are already doing this in the state of Michigan. Who I've talked about Pastor Robert McMcphin of Ubuntu Renaissance Center. They are working with young people. They are working with the communities in Flint, doing youth job trainings, bringing artists, and many other things, trying to also work on Ubuntu, how best can it help them in terms of restorative justice, talking of forgiveness and dialogue instead of revenge, talking of the social harmony element, which I've already alluded to, preserving cultural roots, and trying to connect also people of African descent also to their roots back in Africa, which is the essence why we are trying to create this corridor. So there is an opportunity now for us here in Vongai doing this Ubuntu Circle to connect with Ubuntu, with Urban Renaissance Center, which has created what they call Ubuntu Village. So we have already started some meetings. I think last year or 2 years ago, we started some meetings with this team through Michigan State University, Dr. Upenyimaji. We are trying to look on how best we can work together. And some of the ways we have been trying to look at is to connect the young people in Zimbabwe and the US through shared programs, digital spaces, and also community exchanges. We applied for a certain grant, I think a year ago. We wanted to have this reciprocal exchange visits it was a grant from the US Embassy in Harare. We did not get that grant, but we are still working out because this is something we have found essential for the young people so that maybe we can have some virtual forums. We host regular cross-continental town halls to talk about global issues through an Ubuntu lens. We can also speak of, we have grassroots hosting, whereby Zimbabweans come over there to Flint. We can use family staying networks instead of hotels to build genuine, authentic, deep human connections, which I think these are ethos and values of Ubuntu. So this now will enhance our concept of listen to understand, where we can immerse ourselves in these communities. So difference in terms of time zone, languages, nationalities doesn't matter. It's not a barrier to what we are trying to create here. Actually, that difference is the material for learning. We can go to the next slide, please.
Just a heads up, Calvin, 2 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. So this corridor, we are trying to, it's a people-to-people corridor for stories, culture, knowledge. But the ultimate goal is to have actions through young people connected between Vongai and Flint. So we are bringing all this together, the communities, culture, knowledge, story, and action. So institutions already, like at MSU, and last year I did a presentation at Nottingham Trent University in England about the same issue. So already institutions, they are supporting this. So young people should drive this cause. Next slide, please. So what young people do is just more of a repetition of what I've already shared with you. It's about listening and learning from one another and creating like what is already being done at Ubuntu Village in Flint, podcasting, films, art, music, oral history, and we archive all this, learn from one another, and we identify challenges and develop youth-led responses. So this corridor is a relationship that produces something for both countries. Next slide, please. Yes, so it's about community issues, listening to another community, joint research, storytelling, bring solution, and having action. So we measure all our efforts by the impact on what we are going to change between the two communities. Next slide, please. So Ubuntu is about interconnected humanity. Young people must help us shape how Ubuntu travels into the future. As storytellers, as innovators, community organizers, and bridge builders on this work we are trying to do. Next slide, please. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you for listening to me. I'll conclude by saying, I am because we are. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Calvin. It was wonderful to hear your work. And now it's time for questions to our presenters. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask any question that you have to our presenters. And yeah, you can either unmute yourself or write your question in the chat.
I was waiting to see if other folks had questions for the participants before I kind of chimed in. But want to thank everybody for phenomenal presentations. I think I'm always amazed at how I am called into these spaces. So I am Takesha LaShore. I'm a social worker and sociologist by profession. And when I looked at our list, I'm seeing business entrepreneurs and engineers, and I say, well, how do they end up in a room where I'm the expert? And when I hear the social and human connection, the common threads around linking those human connections to industry across the board. One, I am very hopeful for the future as I hear the things that you are all doing because it is that next phase of advocacy and exploration and creativity and innovation that is needed. I have to say, as a social worker who often and a sociologist who often works along this macro micro continuum. I'm an anomaly in my field in the sense that I'm not just a clinician, I'm also a macro social worker. So this global context that I constantly hear is not lost on me, where you are doing these really phenomenal macro level advocacy. I'm going to say policy because I'm planting a seed for all of you, but also very connected into the individual and how one informs the other. So that's more comment. Don't have very specific questions, but just kind of comments on each of the presentations. And actually, since there's a question, I'm going to pause my comments and let that question be asked. And then I'll come back with comments. Let's see, there was a question for Priyanka. Did you encounter youth who were not interested in exploring community history or felt disconnected from their community? Megan is excited to hear about your work and would love to hear if you experienced this and how you would encourage curiosity with the youth.
Thanks, Megan, for the answer for the question. And absolutely, like I think all the time you have, and I also, briefly talked about it in my presentation, that there's always students who are like, oh, this is very boring, and like, why do I care? And even if it's about their community, when the first problem I think is that it's not always explicitly about the community. What I have seen as, in my experience as a teacher myself, as teacher educator, like there's never a student who is disinterested in all topics of history. Like, every student will have some aspects of history that they are interested in. And I think the key is to understanding what it is that they care for, and then how do we kind of loop that within our work as educators. So that was kind of like that. And one thing. And I also kind of, we also need to balance it out because, you can't always send out the kids in community to do, be little historians and do these projects and things like that. Like we still need to have those content knowledge, those standards, and all those expectations that we have from teachers, like those are very real. So my hope is to have some kind of a balance wherein we give students uh, space to explore history of something that they care about, that they are passionate, that they live in their own everyday experiences, because it is really so integral part of our lives, while also kind of having how we are always, while also making sure we are covering the content. And once you have that entry point of what you feel connected to is being reflected in what you're learning, I feel like the other connections become, and other broader interest becomes easier to understand. So yes, that's kind of where I'm at.
And I think I'll add my comment for your presentation overall. I think in the academy, we are always challenged with the archaic structures and requirements for various degrees, and how do we look at what the new creative, innovative academy should and would look like. And I think part of my utopian thought would also be educational credit for lived experience. And I don't know, I'll leave that to you as the potential expert around that on how that would come across. But I think you're right on so many regards. So one of the things I wanted to talk about in terms of your, just to comment on the overall importance of this, is that global learner is not so, like you said, not so much just to send somebody out into the world to experience it, but they are a seed that has been planted, and who they are goes with them. And I think there was something very important around the utilization of identity formation, which we know comes from conflict, is created and supported either through conflict or connection, and having the opportunity to choose, right? A connection before conflict when you enter into the world that may not be as forgiving as your place of origin. And what that then means in the academy when we start to look at identity formation as young adults, but also mental health challenges for students as they present in the classroom. And we know that those students that are grounded feel more supported and more open to be transparent about their challenges in higher ed as a result. So I think really important work. I love this global learning reimagined. It's not just about going somewhere and learning in a different space. It's about understanding who you are and the connection and the seed that you've planted that comes to fruition and exposure. For is it Emmanuela? Wanted to just give you kudos around bringing the social into software engineering. I think that's such a hard connection to make, that human connection in software engineering, and the work that is very logical, very logistical, lots of numbers, but being invested in the human and the human experience. Tracy, love the work along social entrepreneurship. I heard you say something around partnerships. Take a look at Wayne State University Social Entrepreneurship Hub. They've been doing a lot of work over the past decade building social work, sociology, and business. So they may have some thoughts. I know they definitely have a certificate, not that you need to go back to school at all, especially being in an MBA program, but to look at ways that you might be able to look at partnerships for the support and work that you're doing.